healthcare. We're just in kind of this moribund state right now where, you know, it's coming back a little bit, unemployment going down a little bit, but we're not really growing, and we all know that. Why? Why are we not taking off? What should we do to make it take off? And I know the usual answers we hear from Republican candidates, but really tell us philosophically, what's wrong right now? Start with Erica.
I think there are a couple things wrong right now. I think part of it is the metrics that we use to measure our economy. I think we're seeing that they're not accurately capturing the picture. So on one hand, we expect to be doing better, but we're not. I know right now we have an 8.1% unemployment rate, but that doesn't capture the underemployed, those people who have stopped looking for work. Also, I think the fact that we measure the health of the economy by consumer spending is a wrong metric. What got us into part of this problem to begin with is that there was this infusion of people spending on things that we could not afford. We did it personally and we did it as a country. That's a problem. I think I would focus, again, what can federal government do? I think there are some things, but it's really not the job of federal government to create jobs. But in terms of this specific district, I would be looking for ways that we could create some public-private partnerships with our research institutions and look for ways to use some of our natural resources and industries. Looking at ways in which focusing on agricultural industry and ethanol could spur job creation would be important to me. I think that there are things that federal government can do. We can't obviously create jobs. Obviously, we can have a tax code that does not penalize businesses for being profitable and allows them to keep more of their resources. I think also getting rid of the healthcare mandates that make it difficult for businesses to realize, can I hire someone without knowing exactly how much regulation and money I'm going to have to pay? Those are some of the broad things. So I would focus broadly, but then look at on how we can leverage some of the resources within the 13th district to create jobs.
Kathy?
Sure. This is a passion of mine. When you start a small business, you start out with one concept. I have an idea. And that's what every small business owner says. I have an idea. That's what I said 15 years ago with my partner. I have an idea. But now the problem is you say, I have an idea, but. And what is that but? But I don't know if my business is going to survive because of all the impending regulations. Do you know that we have $11.5 billion in new regulations? It's called the hidden tax. As a small business owner, you feel those things. As far as the federal government goes, I want the federal government to stay out of my small business. I want to be able to run my small business, and I want to be able to grow. I don't want to have regulations on them. I don't want to be told that if I have over so many employees, I have to do this insurance program here, I have to do that. I want to have that freedom. I want you to have that freedom. I want to take that but word away, and I want people dreaming again. I want them to get these ideas that I can do a small business. And I think a lot of the kids that are coming out of college now, these young adults who are coming out, they need that dream because the traditional jobs are drying up. I was at the pharmacy today and this young girl comes up and she has a resume in her hand and I was standing there and she's like talking to the pharmacist and she was like, I'm looking for a job and here's my resume. And what did he say? Go online. Go online down the road, and she goes, well, but do you want my resume? And he's like, well, okay, I'll take it. It's so frustrating now for people of all ages to find a job. We need to make paths easier. We need to get the kids working. We need to get the middle age working. We need to get the people my age working. My point is that we have to stop taking all these regulations on the small businesses. We have to stop bearing down. And we have to start to lift these things so people can dream again and start to have that hope that they can also have a small business someday.
Rodney, what's your prescription? Do you have?
Well, first off, one proposal out in Washington that could create thousands of new jobs that hasn't been approved is the Keystone Pipeline. Environmentalists and Democrats are holding that up. Thousands of jobs immediately after that's approved. That's one thing. Secondly, my dad's here. He's a small business owner I talked about in my remarks. I talked with him. He understands the need to have certainty in his business. And we don't have that certainty because of regulations, burdensome laws and regulations that Kathy talked about, that we see that businesses, they can't anticipate what their overall cost is going to be. The state continues to introduce legislation that's going to continue to raise the cost of doing business here in Illinois. What we've got to have is we've got to have a change in philosophy to give that certainty to not only the farmers, but also the small business owners. And when we cut those regulations, those burdensome regulations out, and we make sure that we pass common sense solutions in Washington, they're going to have the certainty to know this is going to be my cost today, and tomorrow this is going to be my expense. And they're going to know what they have left over to actually create jobs, to provide those opportunities, not only for adults that are underemployed, but also kids that are trying to get their first job, their summer job. But what we truly have to do as Americans, we've got to make sure that we create a brand new philosophy of how to operate in Washington that says we can't spend more than we take in. And when we do that, the so-called consumer confidence in this country is going to skyrocket. But when that does, we have to make sure that American families don't believe that debt can just be paid for later.
Do you, we need to move on, but I'm curious in some of your answers. Do you see that Republicans possibly have had a part in this growth of government regulation? And if you're party leaders, where would you draw the line from your own party leaders in terms of supporting regulations or intervention that Republicans might want? Kathy?
I think there's been Republicans and Democrats up there equally doing damage. And we need to take a line, and we just need to go back and say, what are the foundational principles? What are we looking at here as far as holding the line? I believe that we need to make sure that the regulations and on both sides of the aisle. I mean, it's not like you can say, well, okay, we're Republican, so if we put a regulation in, that's good. And if we're a Democrat, oh, that's not good. No. We need to go up there and we need looking through everything. Remember what happened when President Obama was elected and he said, I'm going to have a person go through and surgically go through the budget. Where did that person go? I mean, did she look at the books and go, oh my gosh, and she left? Because we never saw her ever again. What we need is that person back again. And I am committed to getting a team and working with other Republicans, and if there's Democrats, and they're going to come along too and say, let's open up the books, let's go line by line.
Okay, well, that's general,
Right,
but I was
general.
talking about within the party.
Within the party. Can you
You'll hold
restate
the
it?
line.
Well, I will hold the line, yes.
Okay, Erica?
I think it's important to hold the line. I think it's also important to acknowledge that both sides have been guilty of this. I think the only way to change Washington is to change the level of discourse, and it has to be done with humility. I think the thing that people hate the most is hypocrisy. And if you're not willing to acknowledge that your party also was involved with promulgating regulations that have hurt businesses, you're not going to have the credibility to be able to propose change. And I think there have been some specific Republican programs that have had regulations that have been difficult for people. You know, for example, No Child Left Behind. I think there have been some regulations that have really hurt local control in terms of our educational system. I think the way to be able to hold the party line respectfully is talking about how it's affected some of the interests within the 13th district. Because the way in which our government is structured, you're not there just to represent a party. You are there first and foremost to represent your constituents' interests. And talking specifically about how regulations hurt people in your community gives you the credibility to say, I understand you want me to vote this way, but the reality is these are the people who sent me here. My interests, my concerns are them.
Rodney, how will you draw the line in your own party?
First off, let me answer your question. Yes, the Republicans were part of the problem. It was a Republican who gave us the bridge to nowhere. But he's not there anymore. That's what elections are for. And when bad Republicans make bad decisions, they get beat at the ballot box, and that's good. What we've got to do is we've got to have Republicans in Washington that are going to have the courage to change the way Washington operates. If we don't do that, if we don't say no to bailouts, and if we don't say no to increasing the national debt even more, and if we don't say no to deficit spending, then we Republicans are just as much to blame. And that's what's happened. So what I intend to do is to help create a party line that's going to do just that.